Good evening. Tonight, scientists are closely monitoring an interstellar object known as 3I Atlas, a body.
It was September 14, 2024 at 1300 hours and 14 minutes. I remember the time because the main server clock was 3 seconds behind my wristwatch, and I always mentally corrected it. At that moment, the monitoring room was cold, filled with that constant hum of fans you learn to ignore after a few months. On the main screen, the data stream from the 3I Atlas mission flowed like a waterfall of green and white numbers. Everything seemed tedious, everything seemed routine. Telemetry indicated that Starship's mechanical arm was less than 10 meters from the object's surface. I wasn't looking at the video feed at the time. I was focused on the structural stress graphs. The order was clear: monitor material resistance at the moment of contact to ensure the claws didn't pierce the rock. It was supposed to be a gentle touch just for surface sample collection. But then the numbers on my screen did something impossible. Before the physical contact indicator even lit up, the vibration graph took a vertical leap. It wasn't an impact, it was a resonance. The video screen, which I glanced at in the corner of my monitor, flashed a very strong shade of violet and immediately went black. The silence in the room was instant. No one spoke. No one moved. My first thought was that we had lost the ship. I thought it had exploded, but the telemetry data kept coming. The ship was there. The onboard computer was active. It wasn't the ship that cut out. It was the external transmission. Someone had pulled the plug, metaphorically speaking. I looked at my supervisor, the shift manager, expecting to see panic, but what I saw was worse. He was looking at his phone, not the screens. In that second, the silence was louder than any alarm. Why cut the camera if the ship was still transmitting? My name doesn't matter now, but my role was a Level 2 data analyst at a third-party firm in Brownsville, Texas. We didn't work inside SPACEX, but we processed the data trash they didn't want to filter internally. Basically, we scrubbed the static noise so the real engineers could see clean lines. I had been there for 8 months. It was a good job. It paid the bills and gave me access to things most people only saw on YouTube weeks later. On that September morning, the mission was classified as a low-priority test. The target, 3I Atlas, was officially catalogued as a nickel-rich asteroid orbiting on a trajectory that brought it conveniently close to Earth for a docking test. No big deal, just a rock floating in the void. My routine was to sit at Station 4 on the second floor of the admin building and ensure the vibration data packets weren't corrupted. I had a mug of lukewarm coffee on my desk and was thinking about what I'd do on the weekend. The building was old, retrofitted to be a data center. The carpet was grey, the walls were beige, and the windows were covered to prevent glare. Nothing there screamed government conspiracy. It was just a boring office with powerful computers. The weirdness started when I noticed a subtle detail in the target's metadata about 20 minutes before contact. Starship's navigation system was correcting its course with absurd frequency. Usually to dock with an inert rock, you calculate the route and go. The rock doesn't move. But the maneuvering thrusters were firing every 2 seconds, as if the target was shifting position. I thought it was a sensor calibration error. I logged it in, the digital logbook, as possible gyroscope drift. It was supposed to be just another Tuesday of boring numbers. The first real break in my understanding of what was happening came 5 minutes after the video cut. The main screen remained black, displaying only the message, "Signal lost, awaiting reconnection." But at my station, the raw internal audio data from the fuselage was still coming through. It wasn't microphone audio, it was from piezoelectric sensors that pick up vibration In the ship structure, if you hit the hull with a hammer, these sensors register it. What I saw on the graph made no physical sense. When metal hits rock, the graph shows a sharp, chaotic spike. It's a dry thud. What I was seeing was a perfect sine wave. It was a hum, a continuous harmonic tone that began the exact moment the claws touched the surface of 3i Atlas. Rocks don't do that. Dead rocks don't echo back like that. It felt like the ship had touched a giant bell or something that was vibrating on its own. I tried to isolate the frequency. It was low, almost imperceptible to the human ear if converted to sound, but it was there, pulsing rhythmically. I looked to my side. My colleague at Station 5, a new kid named David, was typing furiously. He looked nervous. I asked quietly if he was seeing the same harmonic reading. He didn't even look at me. He just shook his head and minimized the window he had open. That's when I realized he wasn't working. He was closing files. He was deleting his machine's local cache. My throat went dry. I saved my screen log to a temp folder disguised as an error report. I tried to convince myself it was a sensor glitch, electrical interference. But deep down, the math didn't lie. The atmosphere in the room changed drastically over the next 30 minutes. The shift manager, a man named Roberts who usually spent the day complaining about the AC, was now standing behind the main stations, speaking quietly into a radio communicator I had never seen him use before. He wasn't talking to the SPACEX engineering team. His body language was submissive, as if he were taking orders from someone he feared. I raised my hand to report the vibration anomaly, just to test his reaction. Roberts came over to my desk. He didn't look me in the eye. He looked at the monitor, saw the sine wave graph, and for a second I saw fear on his face. But he hid it quickly. He said it was an audio system feedback loop and that I should ignore it. He told me to restart my station and clear the memory buffers. The order was direct. Reboot, and do not note this in the final report. It's bad data. I obeyed, or pretended to. I started the reboot process but left the capture program running in the background. As the screen went black for the reboot, I looked around. The server room doors, always unlocked for airflow, were closed. There were 2 building security guards in the hallway, standing with their backs to the glass. They weren't the usual reception guards. They were bigger men, in uniforms with no clear identification. The stifling feeling was physical. It felt like the air was getting thin. No one talked about the cut video. No one asked when the image would return. Their indifference was too rehearsed. Taking advantage of the slow system restart, I pulled out my personal tablet used for reading news and tried to access the internal Wi-Fi to check if anything had leaked on Twitter or specialized forums. The network was dead. No signal. My cell phone also had no service, which was impossible in that part of the city. We were in a local communications blackout. That's when the system came back up, and I accessed the log file I had saved earlier. I needed to see the moment of contact again. I zoomed the timeline into milliseconds. What I discovered made my stomach turn. The laser proximity sensor, which measures the exact distance to the target, didn't show 0 at the moment of impact. It showed that the surface of 3i Atlas recoiled a matter of millimeters, as if the surface had yielded gently under pressure or moved to accommodate the claws. It wasn't rigid, it was adaptive, and there was more. Crossing the claw temperature data with the vibration, I saw the metal temperature rise 30 degrees in 2 seconds after contact, thermal transfer. The object wasn't cold, the object was emitting heat through conduction. Rocks in a vacuum in Earth's shadow should be frozen. That thing had an internal power source. I looked at those numbers And the logical conclusion was terrifying. The system didn't hit anything. It connected. If you're following this reasoning and realize where this is going, you understand why my hands started to shake. At 1500 hours, Roberts announced that the shift was ending early due to technical maintenance on the region's fiber optic network. It was a blatant lie. Maintenance never happens in the middle of a critical shift. He asked everyone to leave their stations as they were and leave immediately. No taking notes, no flash drives. I left the building feeling like I was being watched. I went to my car, an old sedan parked in the corner of the lot. As I started the engine, I noticed in the rearview mirror that one of the new guards was at the building entrance, speaking into a radio and looking in my direction. I didn't run. I drove slowly, respecting every red light, in a cold sweat. I got home, and the first thing I did was try to access the company's remote server using my home credentials, something I always did, to get ahead on work. Access denied, user not found. It wasn't incorrect password, it was user non-existent. They had erased my account in the 20 minutes it took me to drive home. I tried calling David, the kid from Station 5. His number went straight to voicemail. The paranoia stopped being a possibility and became a certainty. I locked my front door and closed the curtains. I had copied the vibrations, numeric codes onto a piece of paper in my pocket, a grave protocol violation. I looked at that paper as if it were radioactive material. They weren't scrubbing the server, they were scrubbing history. I spent the night awake, analyzing the numbers on the paper. I didn't need a supercomputer to understand basic patterns. The vibration frequency, that harmonic hum the ship picked up, wasn't constant. It had modulations, subtle variations in time. It was a repetitive pattern. Short, long, long, short. It wasn't Morse code, it was something more complex, mathematical. It looked like a sequence of prime numbers being transmitted through the hull's vibration. The partial yet devastating revelation came when I compared the start time of this vibration with the time of the video cut. The cut didn't happen when the ship touched down. The cut happened exactly 4 seconds after the vibration pattern began. SPACEX's AI system, the onboard computer, identified the pattern as intelligent or anomalous and triggered an automatic security protocol to cut the public feed. This means SPACEX didn't know what they were going to find. They were just as surprised as we were, but the silence protocol was ready. 3I Atlas isn't an asteroid. Based on the density, the hollow resonance, the heat, and the vibratory response, it is a camouflaged structure. A buoy, an ancient satellite, a probe, I don't know. But I know that when we knocked on the door, someone turned on the light. The tension of that night was unbearable because I knew that somewhere, someone was listening to that recording on loop, trying to decipher what the thing answered back. It was waiting for us. 2 days later, I received a formal email at my personal address. It was from HR. I was let go due to departmental restructuring. I received a generous severance, far above what the law required, conditioned on signing a new non-disclosure agreement, much stricter than the original. I signed it. I have a family. I have bills. I'm no movie hero. SPACEX announced the following week that the test with 3I Atlas was a partial success, but that there were data collection failures due to solar interference. The video was never released. The object is still there, orbiting, catalogued as an insignificant rock. But I noticed that the timeline for manned missions to Mars has been accelerated, and I noticed new defense contracts being signed for deep space debris monitoring. I don't know what they woke up out there. But I know space isn't as empty and silent as we were told. Sometimes I wake up at night thinking about that hum, that vibration that felt like metallic breathing. We touched something bigger. And now all we can do is wait and see if they're going to return the visit. If you think this story needs to be heard by more people before it disappears from the algorithm, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell. It really helps keep us investigating, and I want to hear from you. Where are you? Watching us from right now? Leave the name of your city or country in the comments. I'll see you in the next dossier.